So, have you ever wondered how food can affect our health, specifically even mental health? I know personally, the older I get, the more I realize how much impact food can really have on our body and our overall well being, our overall health. And this is why I invited Nicole Arcilla to join me in our conversation this week. She's a mental health dietitian, and we will be talking about mental health on food, life, and just everything in between. It's still Mental Health Awareness Month, and so we are continuing conversations surrounding mental health. I hope you find some useful tips and information that you can put into practice for your health and for your just mental health. I hope you enjoy it. Hey, Nicole, how are you? Thank you for joining me in this conversation for Mental Health Awareness Month. So, how are you doing?
Of course. Good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. So, as we both know, it's Mental Health Awareness Month, and I wanted to have different types of conversations surrounding mental health. And then you have been supporting Link of Hearts, and so when I came across your account and I noticed that it says mental health dietitian, and it actually got me intrigued because it's actually something that I've never really come across with. And I know, not that I'm looking for a dietitian, but it's just like, oh, that's interesting how it's so focused, and I loved it. And that's why I thought I'd invite you over here and just have a talk over it. And then maybe it will be beneficial for all of us to learn a thing or two from you. But first, maybe you want to share something about yourself and just like how you started this journey.
Sure. So, hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Arcilla. I'm a registered dietitian in the DC metro area. Specifically, I'm on the Maryland side. So I've been a dietitian working in the wellness space for quite some time. And I have a business called Your Gut Feeling, where I focus on nutrition and mental health. Yeah, so that's me in a nutshell.
Nice. So, I guess my first question for you is how what inspired you to focus on mental health as a dietitian?
Yeah. So I would say it was a merging of two different journeys, really. So even as a teenager, I was already, well, I can't say I was interested in mental health, but I was beginning to explore it because I knew even before high school and before becoming a teenager, I felt like I was different. But of course, that wasn't in my vocabulary yet. I didn't know what mental health was, mental illnesses. So when I finally, gone in the real world into college and just was more exposed to the world, I started understanding what mental health was, the importance of it, and also just understanding what my needs were. As I was going through that, it just became more and more of a passion point for me, especially when I realized there's just wasn't enough people talking about it, especially within the Asian community, where it's a huge taboo, and it's getting a little bit better. There's definitely more conversation and awareness, but it's still a difficult conversation to have and a topic to bring up nonetheless. So, that was one of my journeys. Just became very passionate about it because of my own experiences. And then I've always had a love for food as well, especially with how it connects to culture. And at some point in my career, I was working one-on-one with clients that had chronic gut issues. So IBS, or even just a list of food sensitivities. And through that, I started seeing this connection with mental health also. So oftentimes the clients I was working with, they had IBS or some kind of chronic gut issue, and coupled with that, depression, anxiety, or something else with mental health. So I realized I could kind of bring those two paths together and just make a business out of it, really.
No, that's amazing because I've never really seen a dietitian. Normally, I think typically you tend to see a dietitian when you're going through some when you're going through a health issue, right? And then that's when you seek a dietitian or a nutritionist. So I have never seen one myself, but I remember being diagnosed IBS like back in college when I was like in deep depression. But I remember the solution then was they were giving me a medication for it. But I refused to take medication, any additional medications then. So for me, it was just like IBS was just there. It was a part of me then. And it was not something that I really associated. Oh, this is because of what you're eating or
Yeah.
whatever your food intake is, and not really associate the two. So I mean,
Yeah, I think a lot of people are on that journey with you. Just not having that awareness just yet. Science has actually always been there for a number of years, but as we're getting more aware of mental health and also aware and interest in gut health, people are starting to finally see that yes, they go hand in hand.
yeah, and it's good to go. I did actually start, coincidentally, I started seeing a nutritionist 2 months ago. So it's only now that I've been really realizing how I'm sensitive to certain foods, which is
Yeah.
affecting my overall health and possibly my mental health. I don't know yet. So I have not gone that far. I have not really associated any specific food. And which actually would be a good segue, like for you. I mean, how what do you think are like the basic, like what's the very, if no one knows anything about like your food, especially in our culture, right? Like how would
Hmm.
you start the conversation as far as the impact of what we eat directly on our mental health?
Well, that's a hard one. Just because there's, well, I mean, again, there's that stigma around mental health within our community, but then also, I would say too, particularly for Asian Americans, it's we have all these Western ideals of what health looks like, and that impacts how we associate our own foods. So, a prime example of that is we often hear, oh, rice is bad for you. And I often hear too, and this is also one of the reasons why I became a dietitian, is I hear so many people tell me, come up to me and say, oh my gosh, I miss eating XYZ from back home, but I can't eat it anymore because I heard it's not good for me. It's bad. And that breaks my heart because that's really what they're saying is I can't have this food as a part of my culture and therefore a part of me. So it's it's hard to hear. And I really try to break it down and explain to them it's really not just one food or one nutrient that's going to make or break your health. So, in terms of having that conversation with our food and our mental health, one of the first places I like to start is making sure that we can establish a healthy relationship with our food. We're kind of taking away that perspective of good food, bad food,
Mhm.
healthy food, junk food, and really taking a look at our overall habits. Because when we get into that mindset of good food, bad food, putting moral value to our food, it just creates a lot more stress and anxiety of what we are supposed to eat and not eat. So, really establishing that relationship first and kind of, in a way, decolonizing our food
Yeah.
and to make it a really strong foundation and start building from there.
I'm so glad you pointed that out because that's one of the things that I'm learning right now. Because the relationship with food and how I see food. Because I mean, Filipinos, I'm a Filipino, and
Yeah.
so our culture revolves around food. So I do miss it. So I was one of those who used to say, "Oh my gosh, I miss white rice because white rice is one of the most
Yeah.
processed." So it's like, but then I've learned to love, like my husband and I, luckily, I mean, we've appreciated brown rice. So we have that at least. And so I try to incorporate that and really replace white rice. But I've started to learn how to not label the food as bad food and junk food. So if I say, oh, I think I want some of those chips, but then I'd be like, okay, it's okay. I'm going to enjoy every bite of it, but then mindful of my portions and mindful of,
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
and not stress eating because that's what I tend to do. Like my mood,
Yes.
I'm like driven by my mood. So if I'm feeling stressed out, it's just like I need something salty or I need something sweet. So I'm so glad you pointed it out. So I'm on the right path.
Yes.
And I'm learning that. I'm practicing. It's a new habit that I'm trying to establish, I guess.
Yeah, it's not an easy one for
No,
sure,
especially
especially.
part of our culture, right?
Yeah, yeah. And also, being here in the States, we just hear so many different things that don't necessarily coincide with our culture and our beliefs. So it's hard to start kind of like break away from that, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, do you have any tips that you can share on how to start? Like, let's say, really, we have viewers probably right now. My family alone probably wouldn't even know where to start. In fact, my one sister just called me this morning because she's interested in starting detox. And she was asking me, because I do a lot of detox myself. And she was asking me, like, how do I begin? So it's almost like really breaking it down. But then I said the very first thing was the basic from what I've learned is just drink lots of water because you want to be able to flush out those toxins from your body, right? But um anyway, but to if I were to ask you what would be like some of your tips on how to just start, really the simplest way of starting, like new habits and really just changing our mindset, I guess.
Yeah. I would say start with building some self-awareness. So what that looks like is, first of all, what is it about your health that you want to work on specifically? And what does healthy look like to you? Because that depends from person to person, right? So healthy for one person might be, I don't know, increasing endurance when they're going out for a run or doing some kind of physical activity. Healthy for one person might be someone who is better managing their glucose because they have diabetes. And then healthy for some, perhaps you and myself, we're working on our mental health, making sure we can better manage our mood and energy levels, things like that. So you have to really start defining what does healthy look like for you specifically, no one else.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, you can start kind of building these action steps or goals towards your image of healthy. And I also like to say, don't try to do too much all at once, and don't make so many changes overnight. Start with just one little thing. So you mentioned hydrating very well, drinking enough water. If that can be your starting point, then let that be your starting point. If you feel like you can make wiggle room with one or two smaller things, start there too. And it goes back to that mindset also of, change is not linear.
Yeah.
Change is not going to be the straightforward path. We're going to have ups and downs. So let yourself ride those waves slowly and carefully by not taking on too many things at once. So I would say that's one of your best starting points is building your self-awareness and finding those little habits to change one at a time rather than taking it all in at once.
Okay, so self-awareness first, and which is my one of my biggest things, because I do believe in self-awareness a lot and how we can
Yeah.
really better ourselves. So start with little things, and you've confirmed that hydration and drinking more water would be one simple step. Can you give like what would be like two other simple things where they could start? Like how do you start for?
So yeah, outside of hydration, especially when it comes to mental health, the other thing I like to work on with clients is looking at their sleeping habits and what their sleep schedule looks like. So if you're someone, because oftentimes, I'll find my clients have very poor sleep quality. So it's not just about getting 8 hours. What do those 8 hours look like? Are you actually fully recovering? And so with that in nutrition, start looking at your eating schedule. So if you're someone that is skipping a lot of meals and even your snacks during the day, then waiting for the evening to have that larger meal, it is a lot of more stress on your body and could be potentially interrupting your sleep quality at night. And then the other thing too is starting to look at some foods that help promote better sleep and relaxation. So these are foods rich in magnesium and or melatonin. So most of the time, melatonin people associate with chamomile tea. That's definitely one, but there's also certain types of nuts like walnuts, eggs, your beans and lentils, whole grains, and things like that. So having a bit more focus there.
Okay. So those are the foods that are rich in magnesium that help you better, like have a better sleep, I suppose. Is that right?
Yeah. So it helps promote relaxation with your body. And then also when you focus on foods that are also rich in melatonin, you also help promote a more regulated circadian rhythm. So that's your internal sleeping clock, basically.
Yeah, sleep is a big thing, definitely.
Yeah.
I know that affects my mental health. Like it's very detrimental to one's mental health. And I'm speaking from experience. These are great tips. So you have a workshop coming up, right? You do have that.
I do.
I signed up. I signed up for it. It's what is it? Is it for next week or 2 weeks from now? I forgot.
It's in less than 2 weeks.
Okay.
So it starts the 25th, May 25th.
And I was what pulled me there was about foods that help ease anxiety. Is that correct?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So are you able to share a little bit something how food can impact one's anxiety?
So what we'll be covering in the workshop are definitely those different foods that can exacerbate anxiety. So those feelings, but also what can help bring you back to more relaxation. So part of it are those magnesium-rich foods, and then we're also going to take a closer look at, probably the number one thing most people think of is caffeine, and where it might also be hidden. So we know coffee and of course energy drinks can be the main culprits, but we'll also go into, taking a closer look at labels to see if there might be hidden caffeine. And then the other thing too is kind of distinguishing the difference between different types of carbohydrates. I think oftentimes people hear that carbohydrates are villainized in a way, but it's actually really important for our energy levels. We just want to be a bit more mindful of where we're getting it. If we're, getting our carbohydrates from something that can more quickly impact our glucose levels, that can really shoot up our energy levels, and that might be also something that influences our anxiety. So really exacerbating accelerated heart rate, just those jitters, and anything else you might be experiencing during a more, having that anxiety episode. And then also, going into, I think I already mentioned this, going into those foods that help promote relaxation and what that might look like throughout the day. Yeah.
No, these are great. So I'm looking forward to that, to learning more, because I'm on this season right now, really trying to improve my nutrition and just like my overall health, obviously impacting, specifically mental health. But thank you for your tips and everything that you've shared. Do you want to have your last parting words and advice for everyone on how to just start, and then also you can share where they can find you and get more information or even sign up for your workshop? We can probably add the link down below, but please feel free to invite them as well.
Sounds good. First of all, again, thanks for having me. I hope I'm excited to see you at the workshop, but I hope everyone else checks it out. So again, it is May 25th. It's a free 3-day workshop. If you can't make it live, don't worry. Anyone who registers will be able to access the recordings and still have access to me to ask your questions if you need it. And you can find my information or also register for the workshop on my Instagram handle at yourgutfeeling.co. So yourgutfeeling.co. And outside of that, again, I just want to reiterate that whenever you're starting your mental health journey, make sure you also recognize that give yourself some grace. Again, it's not something that's going to happen overnight. It's not a straightforward path, and that's okay. And I think I also want to leave a note on, food is medicine, but medicine is also medicine. I don't want anyone thinking that just because you're on medicine, you're at fault, or it's a sign of failure. Everyone needs has different needs for their mental health. Food is certainly a strong component and where you can start your foundation. But if you're someone that also needs medication, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. So,
Awesome. I echo that 100%. I totally agree.
yeah,
And thank you again for all your tips. And hopefully, we can all put them into practice and just like really start small. Guys, it's about starting
yeah,
small and progress over perfection. And
yeah.
every little small step um, to a better health is what matters most. So
It
thank
all
you.
adds up.
Yeah, exactly, right? Thank you for being here, and I look forward to your workshop. I look
Thank
forward to
you.
learning more from you.